Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to Cilinix Crypto, or welcome to the channel if you're new, of course. That's always a possibility as well. And welcome to this new video in which I wanted to do not a market update, because overall today, the market has dropped down a bit, but not much has happened. The market is also very correlated, so there's not much to talk about. However, there is something else that has been going on basically in the last couple of weeks already. That I think is very interesting, and I think you need to know about that. And there's multiple things you could call it. A lot of people are calling it the crypto stock market decoupling, which basically means, and I'll show you that as well throughout the video, that very often the price of Bitcoin and therefore also the price of crypto was very correlated to what stocks did, all right? And then mainly US equities, which is obviously the biggest stock markets in the world. And in the last couple of weeks, that has stopped, all right? So a lot of people are calling that the decoupling. Some people, or at least how I referred to it last week, for example, as well, is that whales are buying Bitcoin, which is not factually true, by the way. It could be whales buying Bitcoin, could also be different things. But that's what I wanted to talk about, all right? So I wanted to talk about what is that, what does it mean, what can we expect from that, and what do we need to watch next week to actually see whether that still holds up or not, all right? Because that means... And I'll probably make the title something like "This can cause a crash or a huge rally," because that's true, all right? This isn't bullish or bearish. It is something that's happening, and there's ways we can actually measure it. And if we are able to measure it on time, or some sort of a change in this phenomenon, if we can measure that in time, then we know whether the price is going to rally up or going to crash. But we'll talk about that later. But what you can see right now, what we're talking about here is that Bitcoin, and we're looking at the 12-hour time frame here, since the bottom, the 28th of February, Bitcoin is still trading higher, right, than that. And you can see that basically for the entire time between the 28th of February and the 5th of April, Bitcoin has held this level around 80,000. Then we take a look at the S&P 500, all right? And what you can see with the S&P 500 is that since the 28th of February, right here, the price has severely dropped down, all right? You can see that right here. The price is down. I'm not even sure how much, but I think it's like 13% or something, 15%, which is a huge decrease for the S&P 500. That's trillions of dollars. So what you can see is that whereas the Bitcoin stock market correlation, as you can see right here, excuse my nose, by the way, I have a little bit of a cold or allergies, who knows. But what you can see is that usually Bitcoin S&P 500 correlation is very, very high. I don't have the data because I have to upgrade for the last month. But very often that correlation is high. At this point of time, it's not high, at least not over the last month. So that means multiple things, or it could mean multiple things. That could mean that some entities are buying Bitcoin for whatever reason, all right? It could be because people are seeing Bitcoin as some sort of a digital gold, finally. It could also be that big parties in crypto want to push that narrative. Could also just be that Saylor is holding up the price. We will see next week. But it's less selling pressure. That's also a possibility. That people holding Bitcoin just are less eager to sell their Bitcoin given these market circumstances. And like I said, it could actually be true that Bitcoin is gaining some sort of a new status in the world, which is very, very different from the S&P 500 and US equities. Whatever is happening, Bitcoin is stronger than the US equity markets, most likely because Bitcoin is being bought up, all right? Because that less is being sold off. It's part of what's going on, but that is not a reason why we've actually been relatively strong. Now, it's going to be absolutely crucial, and that's also the reason why we can still have a lot of bullish momentum or bearish momentum. It's going to be crucial to see whether this can hold up or not, right? So, for example, one of the scenarios we talked about is that this is manipulation. It could be that whales are trying to push this narrative that Bitcoin is the new gold and that's the new narrative, and that retail will start buying up into that narrative, and then those whales will dump and the price will still drop down. All right. So what we need to see is we need to see some sort of a continuation. All right. Or at least a confirmation that this is going to continue. One of the best ways to actually find that out, and that is also one of the ways I have actually been able to identify that this has been going on quite early, is the Coinbase Bitcoin price. All right, what you can see right here is that with the Coinbase Bitcoin price being at a premium, that very, very often means that Bitcoin is being bought up by, let's call them whales, but could be anyone. And what you can see is that over the last couple of weeks, that has happened a lot. So I think this is going to be one of the main things we can watch next week. And I will also keep you updated on this every single day, of course, which I have also done in the last couple of weeks. But if we see this continue, then I think we can be fairly sure, first of all, that Bitcoin will stay uncorrelated to a very weak stock market, but also that eventually, or at least that it's much more consistent and much more trustworthy, trustworthy that we can actually expect a continuation of outperformance from Bitcoin against the equity markets. So that is something we'll see next week. Now, I wanted to end this video and in general, look, this is something that's going on right now. That's what I think you need to know. And it's something you need to keep an eye on, whether it will continue. If it's not going to continue and the stock market will remain bearish, we could have a major crash, all right, where the crypto market is lagging, and that we will still see that move into the low 70s. Next week. What could also happen is that the correlation to the downside with the S&P 500 has disappeared in the last couple of weeks, but that we still do have that correlation to the upside. All right, so if we get some good news, the S&P 500 bounces up, that Bitcoin will be at 90,000 before you know it. So there's a lot of different scenarios, and ultimately that depends on what we will see next week. And that is something I'll keep you updated on. I'm slightly leaning towards being bullish, right? We have already had like 3 or 4 weeks of outperformance from Bitcoin against equities. So that's one scenario in which we can actually continue to see bullish momentum. But then outside of that, we also have the scenario where the stock market bounces, all right? So you basically have these two scenarios against one where 2 are bullish and 1 is bearish. And the bearish one would be that we do not see that strength again, or at least that relative strength again next week. Is a possibility, but like I said, there's more possibilities or more scenarios towards getting a bullish momentum, or at least more bullish momentum in the upcoming time, than that we are going to get bearish momentum. I will keep you updated on this. For now, just wanted to bring it to your attention and wanted to give you some ways to analyze this and some ways to measure it. Hopefully that helps. That was the video for now. Enjoy your weekend. I'll be back with a market update tomorrow, but take care and bye.